Okay. So that chunk of code that I ran into yesterday, yeah, I immediately was able to sidestep. I just commented it out and moved on. And as you can see, that's why you stop when you run into things like that. Because I was about to go on a whole tangent with it. When I really didn't need to at that stage. And that was non-obvious until I approached it today. So, kind of a rough start. I tend to start things a bit more premeditated with my code. That way when I sit down, I have something to immediately grapple with and get running. So I kind of started just poking, trying to, I think right now I'm just walking through where I left off, what's happening with it currently. Which was kind of a useful thing to do, I realized, because just by walking through, there's a couple things like, oh, that's no longer relevant. I can delete those things. Oh, that has a problem. Just do a small fix. So actually pretty worthwhile. Although, as you can see, even though this is sped up 10x, it did take a significant amount of time before I really started going. So trade-offs, definitely. I think sometimes a back and forth, and just appreciating the pros and cons, the premeditated approach and the approach where you kind of walk back in, review everything, move on from there. Had a lot of weird errors at the beginning, mainly to do with just data types, either not being instantiated or being the wrong ones. I settled up. Well, you can see me typing a couple things I'm going to undo in kind of in just a bit. I made like a whole init method, but then I didn't need that anymore. Because I was like, wait a minute, it's already built in. Why am I doing that? And then the button, I turned it into a struct. I usually avoided structs, but I think I finally found the use case for them. If they are actually working the way I think they are working, which so far I think they are. And that's also really cool. That's something, the times I've tried to use them before, it never ended up working right. Or just introducing strange problems. But this is a case where it's right at home, works perfectly, no problems, and it reduces the code I need to write and manage. So very happy with that. I made a quick note as well. You can see me highlight that chunk of code. There's a lot of just like random scene things, like the mat, floor, and everything. And those boxes for the sides to keep objects in. So definitely need to move those out of here into their own class. I walked back through and something that I kept changing the order of. I really think I've settled on a good order now that there's functionality behind it that can help me. Well, not help me, but like actually give me the ability to determine what to do. So that's pretty good. I also found out why some of my videos were less than 10 minutes. And that's if I run that Oculus toggle script that I have, it just kills FFmpeg. So the first section where I did that, I think I lost, about like a good chunk of time. You can see that this video is like 7.5 minutes. So there was like 2.5 minutes times 10. So a good chunk was lost. But today was a sort of day where I have quite a bit going on, so I just rolled with it. And now I know. Because I thought it was something about how I did the code, but it wasn't. Yeah, so just getting things to render out, because we don't have the hands rendering the way we had the rendering before. Definitely went back and forth in different ways of doing it, but really landed on a good way of doing it. You can see right here, I actually have I finally set up a good way to test things out. Instead of having to don a headset off and on again, I just I prop it up kind of around shoulder height to the right of me, and then I can just put something in front of the sensor so that it thinks it's on. And then I can just lift up the controllers and put them to my right side a little bit, and I can mime all of the movements I need to do, test all the inputs. There's definitely some things I won't be able to test with this sort of setup, but the majority of what I need to test, I definitely can. So I'm very happy with that. And with the rendering, speaking of the rendering, I figured out some pretty cool things pretty quickly. And I'm glad I ran into them now, and I made notes of them, and I'm writing them out in the right way, because it's going to be really cool to be able to actually, when it comes to networking, being able to just pass the data that is relevant for rendering just really easily, and being able to just call it from somewhere. It'll probably not be where it is now, but it'll work the same way. I'm just putting it there for now, because putting it in its own class or something similar is not really necessary right now. It would just add complexity. But this code is definitely very much right in terms of direction. I ended up finding out that there's two poses. There's one for the hand, and then there's one for the cursor. So a pose in this case is just a combination of both a position and an orientation. So a vec3 and a quaternion. So I put those together and got the first part working. First part being the stretch cursor. I think it's about, I ran into an issue where the Oculus wasn't working. You can see that little, I forget what those are called. Yep, you see? There you go. It's working, but the cursors weren't showing up, and I realized it was because that normalized direction vector that I was trying to calculate, because it was a 0, 0 thing, even though it wasn't throwing an error or anything, it definitely, I think it was putting it to 0, 0 in the actual world, or something similar. So, fix that. And yeah, ended on a pretty good note. Went from being kind of stuck in the middle of refactoring, nothing really testable to build